See you later.
Thanks, Rob.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rob.
What did you say?
I said thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I've come, so it's kind of.
Good luck, have fun, don't kill each other.
You too.
All right.
Does anyone here have paper?
What?
No paper.
Oh.
All right, I'm ready.
I know Toronto. I could go
No,
grab
no, no.
Yeah, it's not like you want to go back and grab paper. It's like 12 floors down. There's a bathroom right here. There is. Yeah. Our coach lied to us.
Did someone already press this? Or someone? Okay, fair. I was told they were mine, so I just.
Justice, who are you here with?
Liberty.
Oh,
Did not remember this all over the airport.
you had the hood up. I just. Like
Yeah.
Emily said. You were with. Okay. Awesome.
Oh, by the way, the app got sent out like 30 minutes ago, so.
Yeah.
For a second, I thought I put the wrong email in the form thing. So. The individual form? I didn't do that one. I don't know. Jamie's good whenever.
Yeah.
Usual online.
Yeah. You got us when we got a new map out.
Yes.
I think let's start time. Is everyone good?
Yeah.
New confirmation is that the theological order describing higher values of the false rationality issues of continued expression of the non-human with with a non-human cast as a support of societal development, the scale and term benefits of human dignity, non-human biologically inferior to some pieces of the interpretation of the will to acknowledge a future goal to which life should be falsified and will exist on nihilistic these overestimate human knowledge as a transcendent theology only when humanity realizes maybe hypothesis of evolution of the world and inadequate man is no longer centered becoming an experience of many made outcome and conservation goals of the start of ecological resistance informed by satisfied which species are preserved which make a change of conservation and innovation future will for human use of limited or non-human law taken to resident of humans sensitivity of faith non-human obligated use domination for good nature rejecting anti-physical guides the environmental so requires reject notion of nature non-human life life dying knowledge judges the world as not to be that does not exist environments inside higher life developed to a lower hierarchy value emphasize higher more complex for the body greater value lower forms of supportive function higher bias and knowledge ontological continuity open its always flooded relationship with human being, with nature, conservation efforts, and the conservation of nature, not even life, its market evaluation of nature, domination, separate from common dials of value, hierarchies, and the critique of human rationality and humans. I use the human use justification of dominating, explaining non-human in the name of high possibility for that life, projecting false meaning onto nature, not human life, condemns any value of the natural to the animation of the universe and nature's fully harmonized with humanity, removing any possibility of finding value of the natural world, doing us environmental denials of their rods, any values of life, PC 17, future will community to nature, the human projection denials, we have some meaning that is not the meaning of the universe, and rules that forward, conservation, find faith, the science of life, morals, the complex of nature, just like Christianity, because the world exists by affirming the existence of the higher world, conservation denies not human life, natural will, the faith that environmental conscious order against by us, not by nature, the possibility of a world in which value nature apart from its utility for human pursuits, denied distinction between the natural and artificial, this one world in which preserve all nature, being artifice, manifest implicit value, some world beyond the values of the world of natural, human technologies, found in nature, which indicate human needs of all ourselves, when experience of the natural world, human being are top of scale, and human beings represent peak evolutionary more valuable than Lord of life forms, life, development, achievement, humanity, believe the possibility of progress, progression of all life, to provide ideals, is illusion, the ability to deny value, natural being, non-human with divergent interests, navigation, priceless, faith and investment in human world, despite evidence, the contrary of the non-existent world of progress, is from our world, we find value in our world, insofar as advances towards higher ideal, we value that world, nature, non-human life, valuable insofar as it allows to advance towards both nature, which harmonize the interests of human, mankind, faith in the highest power of human understanding, fundamental misunderstanding, and sense, the supremacy of human reason, make the existence of pure comprehensive, the system of the human reason, the world exists, human rational understanding, also tendency to distort or falsify the very world, and promotes known as efficient, or understanding is admitted, God is there to place the non-figuring faith and rationality, sense is the means to know the world, our promotion, the sense of the object, and moral order, it is an act of climate analysis, the forcing the hidden dimensional world, in our minds are too simplistic, comprehending, predicting, inevitable failure, or convalescing, or relationship with nature, we one that consider the ability to perspective, knowledge, to shape our social reality, can value this world, right? We don't need to understand nothing, we do not proportion of cloud enough, but it's other changes of the wisdom, make a balance of less, but an act of place of the world, staging leads to studies upon this fact, as though to history, going to continue to move, to our religious choices, social inequality, energies, also our religious choice, morality, fighting social inequality, to all shepherds, and that's the thing, is going on viruses, all your concepts, and change from radically to rise, relationship, human being, little planet, humanity, increasing knowledge of the world, to student development, for prosperity, conscience, and these two simple national can no longer know that humanity is darkly distracted, this is so the chosen world to world for the nature's long objectively reconciled, so become a place as pursuit because it knowledge with the interaction between mankind and environment changes objective rational observed different to human concerns this external virtue measures climate of the hidden dimension of the conquering changes the clear idea of divine order system reconstructed order lower released by issue based as the divine redemption rejected in favor of scientific reality is not ordered by different forces and impulses that constantly collide universe life with its non-existent individual being has developed its own values of observation of nature not constant different beliefs systems draw different action violence and greater relationship with man and God interdependent relationship with man and nature was working always that instrumental one and demands but nature science nature nature mysterious power divine institution of reality we understood the math and determined value of the market side of which the necessity the hidden dimension science has to change or be cemented all speakers like they have to come in check the rational ways in the dimension do not contain any for ideas believe extra to not change the dimension nor account for a world view ideas and belief need to occur by understanding about social practice very by hidden dimension of all developments and solidity of climate has to do with the dimension of recognition of the world of creation it's a radical revision of relationship with the possible post-modern meaning of life it's to tackle challenges without value to love humanity self-imprisoned by societal contract remove the ability of it to the driving yet it imposes demands for freedom on the conscious self forcing us to turn our instincts toward endless fights that cause all suffering each age some bad conscious endless which human come down to fatness as well as society suddenly instincts will devalue and disengage in the Lord their own unconscious knowledge which regardless safety unfortunate which reduces thinking reduces consciousness there have never been such mystery of the instincts that outside of the posing demands possible to debate against my new substitution all this is not destruction to the back inside so extended we're done with it. Hard to leave some of the destruction into the world of obstructing this of wild free man against the sun and many really enjoying the attack and destruction turn against possessive of such the origin of backlash first the concept of principles of part of to consider the longing for a while constrained of torture chamber that was introduced as suffering of a person from the sun the reduction of nature infesting your rational perspective to the big universal description that accelerating toward human interest generating the endless struggle to seeking to eliminate anything outside the image of humanity despite the whole the concept like manifesting in an acceleration ecological catastrophe the beginning of wars how to find the dispersal unity or what can be said about maximum potential dividing itself from the other and ecologically social environmental issues to think mechanically to be the sense of the world it's a monster energy weights of forces rushing together the effects of these felt violence concept category name all knowledge resistance of all identification of things which are not the same we behave as a concept of factual piece of nature really even running through the concept of the nature consider I think the essence of the thing does not corporate to this knowledge of the yes the thing we produce because various properties and I'm sure the cause of the relationship to the world will must live for analysis of environmental conflict and regulation whole truth great properties and commodification the other movement toward catastrophe torture tended growing realizing the violence speaker of global politics and denying ecological moon wars over erosion freshwater oil fishing stocks find ever cease lane uranium and so forth differences studied whether world system predominance of earth is that temporal processuality the differences forces which allow the proliferation of active bodies and socio-ecological vitality for independently regulating environmental conflict conflict and world legislation of such activities responsible for such conflict that can be no single solution to socio-ecological problems destruction of earth the rise of multiplicity of sources those forcing of false values lead to the result of violence or the will to power causing the denial of instincts creating the arbitrary revenge which turns the impact hallucinating one of the forces subject the person result only uses the traces of their incapable acting the reactions that listen to the intelligence of acting this reaction with this object which revenge was taken which was to be made for the forgetful that delayed death, whereas the result of my experiences, every object is an office, reading good desires, or outrageous, and pain, everything of his memory, traces, events, the result of that entails state of real versus reactive forces, that the active gives a mention reading, thus we have nature as chaos and negative epistemology that radically shifts our relationship with nature by recognizing the ability, rationality, and no nature in favor of nature that holds value outside of human description value that is unknowable and not known, just no five. Underneath nature's critique of morality, lies the speech of nature's chaos, which is the total lack of order in the nature, apparent order is about a moment that is true and opposite of human supposedly identified nature. Nature's chaos should be understood as negative epistemological statement, indication of finite nature of human capacity, no nature as itself, our relative nature of human nature, relation, order, we exist only because of our own order, nature is chaos, refers to our own releases without proceeds for operations, so there are interpretations of nature and our nature, vanished by a form of nature, carried from value, which cannot be our priority, appreciates value, issues of the power, and our life, so we recognize as something meaningful, because of the setting of true life, nature, be awareness, nature, to be human measures, human nature, we interpret this as part of all encompassing nature, we shift, we are image of nature, which shines by which we cause it, analyze the self-created, size, normal operation of the world, nature is chaos, basis of the task of knowledge, and the appropriate nature is to be expressed in all meaning outside of the wheel of nature, because there's no opinion of that we value it as a place of difference, just from morality. Remedying the rational subject across perspective and non-gender understanding our knowing is not a pursuit of objectivity, but committing affects and driving into conflict into gender and perspective on subject matter, only exposure to and constant identification with as many affects as possible can become to a unified something we truly know, gender and mind. This is purely objectively considered no personal participation to affect falsified knowledge that is only perspective states human mind actively contribute organized to data every single not selected, not such that can be no knowledge that affects the very mental state, disorder, gender, perception, to discuss the affects would be to destroy knowledge quality of all affects, to use of knowledge makes more complete affects, or what we call emotions affects are conscious, conceptualized, and non-subject affect nature, affects essentially should not be under the rules of the familiar perspectives and evaluation of what's complete insight, completing our objectivity as something feeling short, discovered or attracted by phenomenon, tells us something feels of common importance, should be substituted by concept, what subject values just associated to the weird physical subject, must be quality, so personal elements and competitive interaction drives, closely related to affect, which should self those that address and affect drives, the stable that is the active behavior, while affect what it feels like when a drive is active manifestation, to find out anything else is the drives like mostly feels of nothing else available to doing animating competition among dissociated interpreting and seeking become master completely meaning and value, there was a self-conscious unity for controlling affects to be associated with the defense, I think, or the affect teachers, the interpretation of both mind and takes matter, this life, this affect having affects under control, manipulating them as part of equality, positivity, higher clear cognitive state by conscious that ignition does many affects will their control, so the divine form by antibodies are to be as sufficiently defend that I can take sight between drives creatively evaluating news with the state and unified self-consciously, to morality, because of conscious identification of values that are key to make me sovereign individual, publicly subject, not an external side of the one out of favor, sensing the autonomy of the individual to realize value of their own to build self repression, general mind, some individual considered being truly if he realizes the world of the universal creative spirit, make the world free, get positive desirability, gives self pressure, believe in the dynamic and literature, and most harms of people, culture, psychology, morality, because of autonomous and moral virtue, systems for the to be valid to be peaceful, which is already to report what's good, so an individual can occur with this like sensitive attack to reduce what he promised in the past, not going to come already, but some general practice was with according to my power, spirit, one of us says oneself relevant to authority to an external set of what ought to be, the gate field of replaces some individual of a line moralistic, the architecture will be a dichotomy, conscious of the radical as the tool of freedom, he wants to use our allegiance for values, regardless of sickness, and the high aspect of revaluations, living of values that one knows rather than to which are received universal subscription of all space of new values, should shift our what's in the value of people of us, students to discover everything, market-based change, faith and rationality by living in the market to an eye, like a communicates value for price, reducing human value to being the consumer, so it's all three. Fundamentalism in position of ultimate true power, like repetition of power, free market rationality, secure predictions of rationality, applied rhetoric, around rationality, progress, market, less result for truth, understood law of nature, defines truth by touching price. Mark the card at price.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. What impacts do you think the 1AC solves?
Yeah, so first of all, I think the affirmative is a call to the value of life. We think that in and of itself, reading affirmatives that deconstruct categories
Okay, that's about the impacts of the solvency mechanism.
Okay, cool. So value of life, climate change, raison d'être,
Forever wars.
Okay.
forever wars.
What is nature?
We actually think that asking that question in and of itself is counterproductive.
Can you sever the affirmative from the authors you cite?
Say that one more time.
Can you sever the solvency mechanism or the affirmative from the authors you have cited in your evidence?
We think that the solvency mechanism of the affirmative it can be divorced from the authors. We think that what happens in society is different from the authors who write them.
We'll disagree with that later. Do you reject technology?
I think that having technology as the sole lens through which to view society is bad. We don't think that having society, period, is bad. We just think having it as the sole evaluator of things is bad.
Okay, does the affirming technology does not? Actually, I'm going to move on. The first Janaway evidence, the evidence talks a lot about some kind of drive. What drive is the evidence referring to?
Yeah, so drives are like basically what emotions we are psychologically driven to side with.
Sure. How does the app make like new emotions manifest?
Yeah, so we don't think that we make new emotions manifest. We think that by exposing people to more sides of a topic, we're able to consciously identify what is biasing our knowledge when we're given a new lens to view a topic.
The card is tagged, remedying the rational subject requires perspectival knowledge.
Yeah.
What is perspectival knowledge?
Yeah, so like I was talking about, different perspectives on a topic. We do not think that objectivity is possible. Rather, we can provide viewpoints to a topic, and that is perspective knowledge.
The middle of the card says, to disconnect the affects would be to disable knowledge. What does that mean?
Yeah, so that we think that, like, as we said, you can only have perspective knowledge, which means that our perspectives are informed by the emotions, or as the card calls them, affects, that we side with through our drives. So if we don't look at our emotions towards a topic, since the only thing we can have is perspectives, how do we know what is true?
Does the 1AC claim to make anybody outside of YouTube change their affect, perspectival knowledge, anything like that?
We think that on a post-fiat level, yes, but if
Do
you're
you
talking...
fiat the app?
Yes, we fiat the app.
What do you fiat?
We fiat a subjectivity shift that causes movements against the state to
Who
become...
shifts?
Pardon?
Who shifts?
Everyone.
Why are mindset shift fiat fair?
We think mindset shift fiat is fair because it's the same thing that a regular fiat does. It just changes the people that you're fiating. You fiat over like 5
What does
million
it mean
workers
to
every time you
reduce
fiat.
nature into a single rational perspective?
Yeah, so we think that categorizations of nature that only view it through scientific perspectives are that sole rational like categorization of nature.
Can I setting it up?
It's going to be 1 in that case.
Cool.
It was just so. Oh, I was
I
really
just got it.
The river. I just noticed it. I'll wait for thumbs up for verbal confirmation.
Fair warning, mostly for you all, but just I guess also in general, I have a lot of trouble with 1AC. Mostly like transitioning from end of card into tag. I don't know if that's because I'm tired or because whatever, but just like putting out there that that's the thing that you all should care about if you are interested in writing down what you have to say.
Okay.
Noted.
Heard. Cool. Anyone not good? Take this off. It's gonna be lame. First off is T, interpretation, topical affirmatives of further resolution through instrumental defense of adopting a clean energy policy, at least including a market-based instrument, and resolve based on active policy by law, words phrase 64. Different result to express an opinion, resolution, or vote to resolve by legislature, being established by law. The federal government has 3 branches, passed in 21. Federal government 3 defined categories, legislative, executive, judicial, and adopt requires legislation, Fate 92. The term adopts conflict in the Constitution, directed the General Assembly shall adopt, obviously the Assembly understood the term adopts requiring legislation. Clean energy policy requires a legal framework, Koski 23. A clean energy policy rules of framework connected by the government to determine how renewable energy will regulate and manage the provide incentives for production and use of low emission sources that forward tax subsidy for sure, improvement efficiency standards or emissions and disincentivize fossil fuels and market-based distributors, price-based and quantity-based, page 09. MBIs are price-based distributors use tax charges and levies and quantity-based distributors which use tradable allowances attributed by a scheme-wide cap and vote neg. They don't defend a USFG adopting an MBI. And first, the fairness debate is inherently gained across equitable competition. Otherwise, it collapses that skirts all predictable limits. This topic that makes it impossible to be a negative since all our core offenses evaporated. Seconds, clash absent a predictable stasis for research debates against an infinite race to the margin, lock in-depth analysis and consultation over the core parts of the topic. You only get one topic per year. We have to maximize debate over clean energy policies via an MBI case. You should vote negative on presumption that performative action of the applicant may be enough to resolve their impacts, but winning doesn't validate their truth claims and is a key to strategy because justice decided arguments they don't agree with all the time. Voting out doesn't materially change the systems outside this round, even if their method is a starting point doesn't go anywhere. Cross-sex was clear. They only need to expose you, I, the judges, and us, JMUPR, to their literature. The reading of the 1AC was sufficient enough to do it. There's no reason the ballot is key. And reducing the scale of absolvency to only debate based profoundly unethical. Carpenter 11. Fishing quickly by contained a political advocacy referred to logical relations were unable to be our partner because they understood globalization as something the world is outside this allowed to be treated local way they connect to larger social conditions. People who authentically wanted less human suffering and left alone limited scope of participation as adult educators should be wary of organizing leads us on develop conceptual issues to understand historical moment and mindset shift is bad, man. Policy Fs don't do it. We need to do massive political actions.
When they pass a policy, they can still hate it, which is why we have circumvention debates, so it's not actually mindset shift. Yeah.
When they pass a policy, they can still hit it, which means that we can still have circumvention debates, so that isn't mindset shift. Anyways, they have no method to solve. New conservatives existed for a while. Impacts should have happened when we started them off, and they are wrong about skill and natura. Existed since Plato used and used by Christians to justify hierarchies, but their impacts are still happening. The reason and affirmation of this idea is uniquely key, and no separate authors. You painted the cards to lose Qatari and Nietzsche. We can indict them for defense. We can say they're bad for offense. Otherwise, we can't engage with their literature. literature and affirming the flux carried out by appropriate military and industrial complexes is empirically proven from Wise in 06. The Israeli Defense Force heavily influenced by contemporary philosophy, attacks conducted by units in the IDF that describes inverse geometry and as negative by Deleuze Guitar, so peppers with the Israeli military replied several of the concepts of the plateau to the instrumental for us, allowing us to examine contributed contemporary situations, problems, own paradigms for distinctions that pointed out the concepts of smooth disparity in space that exist in the fascination of military spatial organization, modes of operation advanced by theorists such as Deleuze Guitar, indeed the military's conservative welfare is the ultimate postmodern form of conflict. Civilians become combatants and combatants become civilians, or it gets co-opted by at least background 98. Both speakers and most modern technomads are trained by the uncompromising favor of Deleuze Guitar, the status of censored regularly, and many of the Deleuze Guitar is run by misgeneration of high-tech gift economy with the private and public sectors, and both authors are pretty bad. They endorse philosophy that exclude women are inherently ableist for probably a reason to reject the team on each of their theory powers should be backwards. They need to put human race switch rationality, solve what works inevitable, and resentment is good, it's necessary, the baseline of social justice, souls in 94. We need not therefore disagree with the objectives just as not for the defense of one own interest. The French forces during the French Revolution only looked up to their progressive and they wanted to replace, but they never looked at justice always comes situated by the self of the need, but it need not be selfish and resentment. It need not be opposing capitalist, given that Nietzsche's Uber mentions already even imagine what justice would be without resentment and selfishness, and that makes it possible. Technological development and harnessing nature of futures to make human. I'm going to skip that part actually. Psychoanalysis is unfalsifiable in pseudoscience and negative. We're the only ones who can correct and understand behavior via market profits, and zero empirical basis for psychoanalysis. The authors either grossly misrepresent empirical data or hubristically exploit single events into broad theories. Pair 17. Psychoanalysts think their model of neuro research. The purpose of the method of the perception. Neuroscientists see the links applying in cognitive science and ignore the idea of neuroscience is being used ways to justify models without attempting to find new ones and develop an integration perspective. Candle maybe the problem time where mayors plasticity finding not to confirm their ideas based on the anecdotes rather than clinical trials of the impact in medicine. There underscores the difficulty reconciling psychoanalysis with empirical testing. Psychoanalysis and sciences not function like one is seen to optimize hypothesis to test on empirical methods or proof constructs. Psychoanalysis resembles the humanities of postmodernist purpose and truth is relative to defending the hegemony of those powers. Some adopted these ideas like Kant and created his own eccentric practice resemble the cult leader restrict the academics and no training in science that could lead to isolation of the discipline, and extinction should be prioritized. Certainty 14. Given extinction global threats and dangers human kind of branches survivors should be asserted as the first fundamental right now. It's philosophical but legal. Nobody wants to see the life in all the present and future can be annihilated. This is like Insignia first debating the rest of the ship instead of for taking action delayed. The ship has already taken the water. The challenge of the food world seen everyone destroy human civilization, shifting the theory of exclusive attention to institutional type of activity. Yes, nuclear threat critical theories seem reluctant to address philosophical issues. We have global challenge of literature justice. This is the pointing out the motivator just institutions assume responsibility for future generation, but do so for the survival to give ourselves a reassurance that life is meaningful. How doing so helps us should isolation become partners in solidarity. Human rights and only flat living human kind of morality makes sense again on reliant on moral nuclear war is potential to strengthen all relevant political actors and what community legal formations cannot be ignored. They created education and political struggle support for civil society, and life is inherently valuable. Experience, friends, family, and potential for meaning and purpose. Existence is a prerequisite to evaluation as the essence of subjects so that our scenario proposes their offense, and this time this is bad projecting scientific consensus is common. Skipping that part. Skipping both of those. Farming equals control over nature, ensures human relation over nature, seeks to make nature and plants knowledgeable, only utilizes nature for human benefit. If they are right about solvency and they're able to decouple our understanding of nature, that means that we lose farms, industrial farms that solve food shortages, suppress biodiversity, greenhouse gas emission, biotech, and precision technology key. Lusk 16. Large farmers responsible for 80% of food sales. One reason for turning to high-tech solutions. Many farm shoppers have difficulty comprehending the scale and complexity facing modern farmers, and increase the size has advantage, especially better opportunities to invest in new technologies and to benefit technologies, reduce the use of water and fertilizer, pumping environmental variants, some of which is brought up by biotechnology, and also erosion improvements in agricultural technology, production and practices, significantly lower the use of energy, water, the goals of measurements of factors affecting the long-term value of the soil to identify which practices and absent food conflicts go nuclear. Crib 20. Potentially over food demolition, new wars and modern conflict driven by scarcity of resources to produce food, hate and hold between factions securing the food supply, beginning tension, scarcity, exacerbating conflict of nuclear arms, even a small nuclear war per capita to drop down world temperatures in a region and hunger, constant stability in entire European community countries on the edge of the knife. And all rationality. First, MPIs only require to recognize that people respond to incentives, not perfect economic rationality. They're in 19. I want to talk about incentive people that you think are rational, you're an economist. I don't think people are rational. I don't basically respond to initiatives, you don't think more, but it's everyone that respond to incentives people are going to, as well as the climate, that means putting a tax on carbon. But economies don't internalize rationality, recognize the complexity of decision making in government. Coil 18. Economies are not enthralled, does not require people to be rational, autonomous, have people interested in it rather than as autonomous. It ensures that uncertainty of the differing people know different things, that asymmetries info. All economists understand that the markets are shaped by policy. The absurd claim about economies pursuing practitioners pass their career without ever being troubled, but through after their first year course, consequences are like kind of being fixes for ignoring friction. And 1AC Schultz is about free markets, not about MPIs. It's just about a free market, so don't let them get any cross applications on to you later. And common education policy making are uniquely good. Growth with 21. If only 60% of students receive common change education, we've seen nearly 19 gigaton reduction of carbon education helps develop strong personal connection solutions as well as sustained empowerment and consequences of non-behaviors and decision making and education and save lives, reducing personal vulnerability, equally important to potential increase young people's capacity to adapt by building important knowledge and growth and skills, including problem solving and critical thinking, teamwork, coping and uncertainty, empathy, and negotiating very transferable skills. And MBIs don't link to any criticisms of Marcus Coffin to Duchin 20. The value of a carbon tax is normative. The comment is bad. It identifies who is responsible to create penalties in proportion to the harm and creates all bullshit and the wrongness of free markets. And the left is due to carbon pricing and market measure taxes are truly the opposite of tools to attack capitalism. And legal reform or pragmatic key to successfully combat climate change alternatives fail. Harvey 20. A good climate strategy requires understanding both means of the end. Mobilization is the strategy of an alternative to the physical system that big carbon going after the big fast and 75 to 80% burn in just 20 countries by 4 major sources. These sectors have been a number of decision makers, those people who can make real change yet often ignore acts that represent a failure to the world about and made citizens experts absent. This is a big problem. The next step is to figure out how they operated and how to apply pressure to them. Government action is necessary to combat climate change. Plus, 20. I don't know. Climate change is a massive collective action problem. The system level changes necessary. Government policy is one of the most important, including laws, rules, regulations, changes to sit back to important, including policymaker process, mobilize public, include diverse groups and windows opportunity must likely win departments and perceived as urgent and visible. The policies available and commitment is hired advocates are to be ready as it closes. Only incremental process is likely. You got anything? Cool. We're good.
Open across. Okay. First, which cards did you cut?
Which card did I cut?
Yeah.
Don't believe I cut any. Oh, which ones did I read? Sure. Last 4, cap good, renewables. Second card, under legalism good. Oog et al. 24, which is the MBI card.
Okay.
Both cards under impurities.
Okay, cool.
What were the voting issues again?
T.
T, mindset shift, fiat, reading Nietzsche.
And losing Atari.
All right, what's the warrant for reading Nietzsche and Deleuze Guattari?
Deleuze and Guattari is we think that their theories are inherently ableist and exclude women in some instances.
Cool. When did I read Deleuze and Guattari?
Sure, we think.
Yeah, I have Deleuze. I don't have Deleuze and Guattari. Deleuze
You actually I see the misunderstanding, but your sixth card, if I'm mistaken, is cited Deleuze and Guattari many times, and also the title of the article saying Understanding Nietzsche, Deleuze, and Guattari. Your theory relies on it.
All right, the warrant for Nietzsche, is it also the same as Deleuze and Guattari, or is it different?
Yeah. We also think that Nietzsche has an inherently flawed understanding of technological development.
And it's a Nazi politics.
Yeah.
Okay, Nazi politics. Okay, cool. The warrant in the Weizmann evidence, how does the app get co-opted by the IDF? This is describing 2006. How does the app get co-opted?
Sure. We think you've said that you fiat a mindset shift towards these ideas. These ideas have motivated the Israeli Defense Forces to not only harm citizens, but to continue atrocities. So we think an affirmation of those inherent ideas is probably bad and leads to more of this, or further legitimization of the Israeli Defense Force.
Wait, the evidence is describing how Israel has made use of a particular concept. Where does it get to the level of saying that, like, this concept leads to militarization and these types
Yeah, so we made a framing argument right before we read the card that we think it links to the implementation of your author's theories, i.e. you have endorsed Deleuze and Guattari. We think an endorsement and exposure to those ideas leads to further militarization. It talks about how the Israeli Defense Force was inspired by 1,000 Plateaus and its ideas behind that, which led them to commit atrocities.
The farms offense, the link, explain it.
Sure. We think that you've critiqued humanity's control over nature. We think humanity's control over nature, as per the Lusk evidence, is the key to producing big farms, which provide a stable food supply.
Okay.
I mean, I can talk more about
where have you made the claim, where have you made the claim that every instance of humans engaging in nature is bad?
Sure. We think that your advocacy statement says, well, first, cross-section is pretty clear that our current understanding of nature is flawed. I can take cross to answer the question.
Cool. Cool. Starting from. Stop time here, I used 351, which means I have 609. Oh wait, that's the wrong one. Probably should do the right one. Round it out to this area. Okay, should have just been 7.
still do. But I'm good whatever. Anyways, too.
All right, our judge is good.
You mean like 10 seconds?
Yep. And order, by the way, is just case the T.
Okay, I'm ready.
Start from groups onto the as nature is chaos, negative symbology that views the nature as a total black board, recognizing the limits of human rationality, divine nature, that value inherent in itself, rather than giving human descriptions. A, every bad vowel is an affirmation of life through recognition of nature's chaos, each is valuable in itself, sparring through joy, creativity, and enjoyment. Overcoming conundrum by breaking everything is beautiful. By 2, iterative testing, it makes better versions of the opposite, solve the real world impact. Third, there are cards only about performance itself. We don't make a performance, we don't make a post-fiat action that still does better things. It's about localism, we spill out of localism because we fiat action that makes better policy making. Secondarily, we still think that the affirmation of value happens regardless of absolvency, meaning that even if they're winning a total negation of absolvency, we still get affirmation of life through the concept of affirming the affirmative. Next, they say that they give you D and G R cards. One, we don't read D and G itself, we read Deleuze. The separation between G and Deleuze is two different things. Deleuze themselves is a philosopher that only reiterates Nietzschean philosophy. D and G together is a psychoanalytic books. These are two separate things. They have to apply the concepts they're at. Secondarily, they try to apply to the Genoa, and the Genoa is purely going off of Nietzschean psychology through drives and affects. Their cards vividly indites the idea of flux. We don't use flux in the terminology they use it. We use flux in the idea that there's multiple perspectives to a topic, not the psychological prescription. Second, they say it's co-opted elite. One, the fiat sells because we subjectivity shift to all the elites, meaning that they align with nature's chaos. Secondarily, they say that it's because of an emptiness of emotion. We only look at emotions, but that's the general way I've been saying that we look at the emotions that are tied to a topic, meaning that we don't get co-opted by elite. Next, they say that subjectivity shifts are bad because it fiats it. One, it's reciprocal. USFG fiat still fiats 5 million government workers and all these legislators. It's no different. Second, we say that utopian fiat is good. It makes better versions of the world that we can envision. Third, it's reciprocal. The world right now is utopian. We live in capitalist utopia. It's not different from the real world. Next, they say Nietzsche violent because they say Nietzsche resentment is good. One, Descartes is really bad. Here talks only about resentment in the context of justice being good. We don't critique resentment as justice. We only critique resentment as a reactive emotions, which Descartes separates as being two separate things. Go back to the one and see and read the Nietzsche evidence. We only critique resentment as a reactive emotion. Next, they say tech is good, but we don't say tech is bad. We say tech is the sole lens through which to look at the world is bad, which means that we, as long as we include tech post-affirmative, which we do, we're still it's not a dissat. Next is another one. They say condoning death is stupid. We don't condone death. They all say it's ivory tower elitist, but no, we say that that's a subjectivity shift, meaning that the ivory tower doesn't apply to our affirmative because everyone gets involved with it. Next, they say psychoanalysis is bad because there's no empirical basis. But one, again, we don't do psychoanalysis. Nietzschean affective theory comes prior to the invention of psychoanalysis and only works on empirical data. We'll provide you empirics on the T page to resolve that. Next, they say that extinction should be prioritized, but no, we'll answer that on the T page below. Next, they say scientific skepticism is bad, but we still include science in our framing. Again, we just say that science is the soul looking is bad. Secondarily, if they're going to go for science, science fails. We've been telling conservatives for years now that climate change is real, but they don't listen no matter how many science articles we show them. It proves that it doesn't actually make actual changes. Next, on agriculture, one, no link, we don't remove agriculture. Remember, the Nature's Chaos card in the 1AC Trenton 05 only says that we're in negative epistemology, which is the only reduced knowledge claims of human over nature, not actual human over nature. Those are two separate concepts. They have to remove where the Trenton 05 actually says that. Secondarily, we're certain to say that suffering is inevitable. That was the Nietzsche evidence saying that suffering happens no matter what. What matters that we drive value out of that suffering, and we'll provide you framing on T, but I'll cross-apply here and we'll read the card below. That specifically, even humanity is destined to die out anyways. The only thing that matters is the life value that we derive from that life in the first place. There's no value in life, there's no reason to live in the first place, meaning that extinction was meaningless. Next, MPIs are good because it does that. One, the card's only about economic rationality, generally not specifically about pricing carbon in and of itself. You don't actually give them that. Secondarily, across the two slope climb, I've been saying that specifically that copying prices to things gives it value through the economy, only not through the inherent value to of itself. It only talks about specifically about general economic rationality, not market-based instruments specifically. Second, the card doesn't actually indict what we're saying at all. It just says it doesn't. It says specifically, I don't think people are rational. Proves that if we don't have a rational basis, specifically people will go to the value that's ascribed to it by other things. Next, on the core 18 evidence, it says economic doesn't internalize rationality. Again, we don't think that it does, but we think that the affects that we provide to people as genetic evidence specifically changes how we look at something. So we don't internalize the rationality, we still change our perspective on something. Next, they say MBI, climate education, and policy making is uniquely good. We'll agree, we just say that the after prerequisite to making good policy making, we feel like policy making is good. Next, they MBI don't link to any other criticism of the markets, but we did that work above. Next, they either way energy policies are key. We agree that energy policies can be good. good. We think the apps are correct to making good energy policies. Next, they say legalism good. We don't think legalism is bad. Again, the app is correct to making better policy making by changing how the state engages in policy making. Doesn't disprove the app. And that helps to answer the law link specifically. Next, let's say state is good and good. We engage the state. We'll make that claim on the we needs on T. Next. First, on the Nietzsche voter, they say Nietzsche's a Nazi. One, thoughts of the individual doesn't characterize their theories by their logic. We should become totalitarian because the founders of democracy reported slavery. 2, wasn't a Nazi. Their work was misinterpreted by Nazis to support anti-Semitic ideas. Their work is inherently racist. 3, critiques of Nietzsche as a Nazi reference to doctored works from their wife who was a Nazi, not their actual writing. On the ableism voter, 1, make them prove how it's been preferred to link as every aspect uses some aspect of G&G would not be valid because it includes Iowa, PC, to winners, transversality. Yeah. 2, no more proud G&G theories are ableist, just an assertion, don't buy it. 3, flexes progressive embraces becoming it's minorities. Now go to the T page. 1, we need before the decarbonization to get on the links that. 2, the affirmative prerequisite all planner education, clearance policy, or market distributors, consolidated policy, moves that entrenched human, non-human hierarchies that destroy possibility of decarbonization means in the negative terms, CEPs and MPIs, double term decarbonization means there's no outlasting kills fairness of education. 3, counter-interpretation, the ask can either refer when engage the resolution A, negative souls over grounds limited. If such type is true, then they can read our alpha on the net, gives them more progress. Class 12. Every time the resolution is over, reverse if you have to defend independent resolution, the app can take the product of the resolution, not required defending the resolution, can't make the competition negative to prove the affirmative is incorrect, the negative resolution, the after temperature resolution, the law of American disadvantage, to develop the negative resolution is on skeptical over the scope of the affirmative rather disadvantage to something the affirmative, negative free affirmative defending the resolution, fundamentally disagree, increase opposition, increase the catching education, still line policy, conservative level of religious defend the resolution, not only right with the resolution, positive right there, the rejection, and the affecting humans are rational, but led by affects, compete those feelings were given talk, limited device, happening when we were exposed to the maximum of affects to constantly identify the affect bias, or else constructive activity, creating individual solve from the affects that 20 to 1 away. 3 implications. 1, Ferris class replicate failed conservations will be objective standard use to advocate towards an effective educator or really set whole value doing this failure with that Ferris class only works to restrict our creativity without any impact on results made wrong value life. 2, turns education, limiting affective interaction, threats, cost identification, drive with bias knowledge. 3, unfairness inevitable affects, meaning judges aren't objective but vote on the affects they bias, way the education be expanded and positively fair. C, translated theology, human science, and telos saving nature, assuming our conscience, that's every liberal meaning, recast the word world for human advancement, that's crazy. 4, implications. 1, framework lines, make pseudo-logical thinking, constructive control principle, 1, making forward human advancement, force safety reality, to make society visualize the interaction with education, class because the real value of creating learning, it's backwards, very super talk. 1, 2, doing system environmental island, place in nature, inherent value, learning, reproductive value, like humans who resent nature, and little players, and apply leaving the value, action over another, export, frustrating, place in Egypt. 3, turns kind of class, top education, MBI, and CPs are failed. Manifestation of human on human hierarchy, nature is helpless, while humans are only rational creatures, say, forcing nature into human animations of the universe, that categories, policy making, sacrificing its wild value. 4, theological world teaches to fail in the face of passion, and faith in rules-based orders can't grapple with reality, trumps Madison, where the constitution of partisan our world is being broken daily, only by questioning which rules hold truly hold value, crafting moral actors can we gave them on their state, seeing the hidden dimensions inside, with the death of God came the right side to the deniable truth, yet the blind faith that we outplay, and blind faith we deny their hidden religious, moral, and social dimension of the climate crisis, place he wakes in 3 implications. 1, if climate denial, just denying climate warming is violence, so is denial of racial, gender, and sexual violence, blind faith in science causes to be realized, independent voter. 2, serial policy, but the climate policy goes solely through the environment through science, or 2, mile liberals, all the hidden dimensions of the climate crisis results in serial policy. The other question is how do we change our relationship with it? 3, STEM education, hierarchy, falsified learning, favorite titleization, STEM education, engagement models, about just the new conservation of arbitrarily choosing which education and classroom the most valuable, sacrificing social moral and participation in the world because the false claims are rationality confirming what is true, teaching dogma instead of reality. E is the bad conscience. Prior to asking what models best serves to make, we need to question the moral actions the game creates. Prior to the comparison, I don't think this is unquestionable that producing clear truth morality. Prior to mastery of an ethic over questioning morality, leading analysts to how they're bias in Law 95. Most churches have committed mastery of human nature, given us priority, humans must become service, totality, fifth priority, human service, domination, tested in school, and everybody gives cruelty, so that they can descend to always move for challenging, incite to the Lord, cleanse of human freedom, widow, the dog, kind of means you do for you to ask questions. At this way, God must converse all things, including debate, humanity, will die out, partly most derive value, to point we don't like things, that's why we should not eat. You know, as I has eyes, tactical, maturity, the way that leads to my instructions, to the genocide, you know, the humanity, rejecting the result of humanity, the only group, humanity, instructions, not doubt. Next is defense, 1% education, academic interaction, all the next topic, education, and more from academic interactions. 2, preserves class, practical ground, generates clash, and so as academic generates same clash, and determine net next still clash over theories of the world competition, makes C to prove KVK is a state of model, if there's class, preserves testing, 3, group TVA, and switch side. Their fashion people have the ways they prevent original fashion, and has need for creativity, freedom, approach, and moral aspects. Anything else that's worse on press. No 6. Large fashion, follow the odds, they have to make it like the laws, values, non originality, 6 words, that it has nothing after describing the same, will the person to describe great life novels, is like describing, activity, deviating from warning. I still be inherited of counting self and another. And no TVAs. Across my hidden dimension, the TVA false focus for states hidden dimension of that nature doesn't solve or doesn't access same education law. Across my TVA cited affect. For end affairs, Rob's probably pretty much be out no value how it sells back cost or affect today. 5, no switch side, doesn't negative interaction. Key to maximizing affect still makes the back cost day force of the camp and deck, but only justification being fairness, reinforcing fairness. I no more grounds of the event transiality. And for fairness, for suitability, fairness, good is good enough, maximize affect, become contact, prerequisite education and skills.
Good, whatever.
What? Good for us? Yeah.
Okay, you said something, like the third thing, you said something about double turn on the framework page. What was that argument?
Oh, yeah, so we state that, sorry, let me go back, yeah. It's the 2 point, we say that basically clean energy policies and market-based instruments are new conservationism. As we described increasingly, we think new conservationism will continuously fail to be able to solve the climate crisis because it assumes that it has these
You read 2 disads on the framework. I think one of them was a bad conscious disad, and one of them was, I have no idea, what was that one called?
Oh, I read 4 disads.
Okay,
We
can you tell me what they
have
are?
affect disad, transcendental teleology disad, hidden dimensions disad, and bad conscious disad.
Can you just tell me the name of the third one?
That would be hidden dimensions disad.
Hidden dimensions. Right.
Good. Reasons to reject.
Yeah, we think the hidden dimensions disad.
That's it?
Yeah. Cool. Can you repeat the first standard on the Nietzsche stuff? I couldn't follow.
Do you mean the first?
The thing your partner had, Jim. Literally the first thing you said.
The Nietzsche voter?
Yes, what did you say?
Oh, that.
Yeah, the argument was you need to characterize how our specific usage.
Great, okay. What other lenses does the app endorse? You say that so long as tech isn't the only lens, the impacts are avoided. Can you tell me what other lenses you do?
Everything's.
Okay, explain what a lens is.
Yeah, we think that objectivity cannot be proven because we are not rational beings. The only way to find the most objective knowledge is by incorporating as many viewpoints as possible, so we can consciously identify which affects are good, which ones are bad, and come to conclusion. We think that when we restrict ourselves
Cool.
to
App is a prereq to policy. How is it just everything you explained to me?
Pardon?
App is a prereq to effective policy. What's the reason? Was it just the thing you explained to me?
Yeah, because we'll make policy making with
Cool. Elites follow on to the app. Trump must just stop drilling, stop exploiting nature. How?
Yeah, we think first of all it makes the legislature have a change in subjectivity, which means you can pass policy making.
Subjectivity, got it.
Second, we also think there's grassroots movements against the state, so even if the state doesn't comply, we still think that grassroots movements cause it to make change.
I just want to make sure I understand. Grassroots movements will overcome the US.
We think that one, they can. Second, we don't think they need to. We think that they can on their own decarbonize by pushing companies themselves to decarbonize.
Sure, that's fine. You got anything? Cool. 1AC Halsey 5 cites Guattari. The article is ecological and mannequin thought. Nietzsche, Deleuze, Guattari. I'm a little bit confused. What is this we did do Guattari bullshit?
Yeah, so specifically Guattari indictment is talking about flux in a different capacity than the Halsey 5 evidence is talking about. When it talks about flux, it's indicting the idea that rhizomes create differentiated knowledge in the form of the tree rather than grass.
I want to make sure I understand. You have still endorsed Guattari, though, correct?
Yeah, and you have not.
We endorse Halsey's analysis.
Fine.
10. What's the text of the counter-interpretation?
The affirmative can either affirm or negate.
Can affirm or negate what?
The affirmative can either affirm or negate the resolution. Oh, Trufanov, is I understand.
Oh, better.
Okay. said there was a dog, right?
Yes, I sent it out. Anybody not ready? Good. Here we go.
Topical affirmatives must have an instrumental defense of adopting clean energy policy, at least including a market-based instrument. No, we need 0 words or redefined, which means they link to our predictability. Offense, resolve, federal government, adopt. All mean acts must defend a legal action. Our clean energy policy evidence is very good. I'll explain why that must establish a rule and framework enacted by the government. The MBI evidence says that must be a price or quantity-based instrument for them to meet our terms. This is a non-starter. Clash outweighs and turns the affect. This sad debate is unique because of hours of research or my competition that's inherently productive process for self-reflexivity and advocacy skills, but can only occur with critical spaces for debaters through in-depth research and iteration over. Otherwise, rational ideologies are locked in because they thrive off the lack of contestation and clash, become normalized and legitimized. That disproves their prereq arguments, and so far as it's literally their inherency argument. Fairness is an intrinsic impact of the game. Everyone has implicitly agreed abiding by state shines, doing line by line, not wanting you to flip a coin to the side. It internally turns all of their offense. Absent procedural fairness, large schools monopolize lack of predictable limit to evaporate clash and topic engagement that causes burnout, makes it impossible to break out of rational dogma. It is cemented under their model of debate. Hold the line on sandbagging. I don't know for y'all, but the 2AC was unflowable for me because he was looking away and fucking blowing through his blocks. Protect the 2NR when the 1AR blows up a second cross application that I didn't get for 2 reasons. 1, burnout pushes debaters on the margin out because they must respond in unfair environments of debate, impacts out unfairness. 2, entrenches dogmatism, incentivizes shouting taglines that never reaches the depth of reasoning necessary to change attitude, and turns their education. They said a double turn, no shot, no warrant for CEP or other words in the resolution being conservatism. The TVA below just proves that there was a double turn between the two insofar as we can wed them to ecological consciousness, but not from the standpoint of the human. They said reading our app on the next solves wrong. First, no stasis points equals means they cannot test, it means we can't test their offense that was above. Insofar as if we read the carbon tax county plan or dissad, they just fucking slay us on the perm. They go for no link because you didn't understand the app, and inevitably, even if that debate does function, there's no iteration on the 4th or 5th levels, which we've identified as key to stop dogma impacted out above. Secondly, they're not going for a switch side debate proper, so there's no cross-applicable offense. Unfairness is not inevitable. There's no reason it's intrinsic to our interpretation or debate. Theirs doesn't solve it, as the role of development is significance in resolving procedural impacts. They only make it worse by forcing small schools to play sketch-up, insofar as it's a sliding scale vote for the interpretation, not maximizing it. And lastly, it doesn't turn education. Stasis is the prerequisite and internal link to education, not just fairness proper. They said learning equals sacrifice. I don't think so. No turn. Clash and topic education protrudes the opposite ambition that will be done on the TVA below, but making demands on legal institutions is successful at combating exclusion. So it's in 23. Participation has become an important concept of expectation because as education helps expand individual intellectual and moral capacity of citizens. Participation enables involvement in decision-making, one of the most important building blocks of civil society, establishing communication channels between citizens and their representatives, support for overcoming the crisis of representation groups involved in decision-making process are concerned with that. Adoption and implementation policies help to monitor and evaluate allows one nature of participation process to be understood, and they are a productive center of discussion, but don't tie to the government or its legitimacy. New 11, making certain demands in the state is not one of the basic strategies of social movements and radical movements. Making such does not necessarily mean working within the state or this suggests me. They call into question the jurisdiction sovereignty by highlighting fundamental inconsistencies, demonstrating the inclusivity of the province of equality and political order, which was formally based on this. The next argument, I think, was the hidden dimensions dissad, prefer procedural fairness over all else. So the only thing the ballot can solve. They have to win a subjectivity shift to solve this, which is non-falsifiable, disproven by going for arguments we disagree with. Alt causes like religion, school, family mean they can't solve it, and even if they can, it only occurs over hundreds of debates, which makes this round irrelevant. argument, but certainly remedies this round of procedural unfairness or clash or limits explosion, which means we have a bigger internal link to straight turning. This is also not a vote, or T presupposes it. It's the question of whether or not the round should have happened in the first place. So they can't go for this. The argument is about science. It will be answered on case, but they haven't connected science and sexism. At worst, science is inevitable in the status quo, and the left doesn't make it not inevitable, so it's not net offense for them. Their interpretation links to our predictability. Offense is no inherent stable stasis point other than revolution because it was communally voted on. Affirming or negating the rest. There's no clear forward ceiling for action, makes it infinitely aggressive, unpredictable, across infinite non-federal agents, non-MBIs that dispute debates in the favor of the AF, individual, international, non-action, etc. that all make it impossible to be linked and explode limits. No serial policy failure. If we win the straight turn or the TVA, it disproves the impact to this. Value life can't come first. It's a question of whether the round should have happened. Case will outline that value life is inevitable insofar as it isn't. T is key to operationalize our knowledge to produce value that will be explained. That wasn't explained on Flash. And limits don't uniquely produce exclusions. Those are external features of society that aren't unique to debate and voting AF can't solve. Using a limited topic to develop provisional consensus through reciprocal infallible argumentation is better. As a better method of exposing how those exclusions function. Dalberg 14 deliberation leads to accordingly informed public opinion enables scrutiny of decision making process inclusive, reason, reciprocal, reflective, sincere. For argumentation, these condition possible engagement condition of the game argumentation, identification, preservation, reflection, cultivation, deliberation, non-set of strategies, whether identify the function of the social political resource to enhance deliberation, every argumentation. This is radically democratic and seems of public associated public opinion and scrutiny as informed hold accountable political decision process and actions or only decision by a voice because understanding the criteria for guiding and judging these practices that normal self-esteem and exclusionary implies that democratic aims from their share are present and necessary features of deliberation that make communication necessary, deliberate, practical, involve exclusion, interpretation, and strength of argument, all be contextually effective, historically specified presupposition, or implicit in every argument, provide accountability, force for a critique of exclusion, topics, and normalized relation to this disciplinary and exclusionary sense, any norm will require the Constitution's liberty to particular ways, and always presupposition to communicate instruction to the exclusion. Construct this critical idea to eliminate legitimate exclusion to deliberation, enable flesh upon possibility for greater freedom and equality. They said argument interaction is inevitable, incorrect. Even if it's partially inevitable from prep or judging, it's not at the right level because we never get to third or fourth level. They incentivize mere philosophical BS debates would never get us exportable strategies to either solve their offense or create value to life in the real world. They said their model is key to KVK debate. That's wrong. KVK debates requires the predictability of the resolution as the KF and the 1AC has to critique parts of it, which creates straight, stable down the ground for the other team to generate links off of it. Is not just if we're incorrect about that, then their model devolves into stale backfile checks, which entrenches improves our dogma internal link. The TVA, go there now. The United States federal government should adopt the carbon tax aim to facilitate degrowth. It doesn't need to solve the entirety of the app. It proves any solvency deficits prove our room for refinement, negation, and net ground evaluated through sufficiency framing. If it provides some inroads to parts of their literature, clash, and fairness, terminally outweigh the rest. Winning the TVA disproves the app as a prerequisite to their offense because it solves their affect internal. It requires, quote, feeling shocked, embarrassed, disgusted. That's a quote from the Janeway evidence. Degrowth solves this through its disruption in this world, but only through proliferation of policies. Remnants went through the term degrowth is immediately barbarous. This means it's not effective. We're asking people to ban long held with the word degrowth is disruptive to the point of being confrontational, isn't easily absorbed, reflecting urgent, unequivocal, transformational change in paradigm shift that we need challenging, implicit in substrate materials, consumers, waste the term degrowth is on because of that. Degrowth gets noticed. We need to use the term in existing policy proposals. It also solves their mindset shift offense because it changes the way we relate to each other in capital. Remnants at all 23, where degrowth describe relationship with others. Based on real living, mutual aid, community care, joy, collective meeting, we need to invest in our relationships. Degrowth offers us a path to subsistence. We're in a long-term restoring the ecosystem. We're to sustain us in our neighbors, community, family. Degrowth out of the way. Out of disconnection, degrowth is focused on we can't consider Earth these ecosystems and inhabitants and righting our wrongs. It also solves the relationship to nature internal link. More 24 higher compared to the U.S. and the resources to reduce their production of more starting to invest in public sectors to fund this works by degrowing the economy, government protects ecologically damaging interests with create revenue from reducing income inequality. Capitalist mindset only focuses on growth. Few repercussions, but shifting efforts away from economic growth and sort of decided with workers prioritize how much the earth is truly cared for and maintained insofar as they win that Nietzsche is a valuable source of thought. He agrees with the TVA, Yasha 22. Nietzsche would be supportive of environmental laws that we constitute our species relationships with nature. Nietzsche would reject original environmental philosophy. This means abstract politics and climate go unaddressed. It's entirely possible that Nietzsche would view the challenge to the opportunity for overcoming weakness in our available or conventionally states that will power can be manifested against resistance, seeks resistance with over half 24 species facing extinction, billions of people facing death, remaining death, is facing a physical true crisis of values. The last argument is reasonability. Defaults, competing interpretations, and offense defense. We have a massive limits disad, which inherently proves they aren't reasonable, especially from the model and subsequent race to the margins. Reasonability in and of itself causes arbitrary and regressive judge intervention as they insert their opinions. It also doesn't, the competing interpretations also doesn't lead to substance crowd out. Rather, free-for-all legal and economic debates about specific intricacies of climate policy, what, how, and where we should implement them. All right.
Alright, are you across. Count starting off to 23 evidence. This is making demands on legal institutions is a good strategy. How do we foreclose that from happening?
Your model.
So our
So
model.
insofar as like our model is a pick out of your model, we think that the debates that happen under your model are not always making demands on legal institutions.
Yeah, but your card doesn't say that we always have to make demands. It just says that we engage in them is one option that is successful.
Well, our
We're saying
argument,
the
our
only
argument is that under your model, insofar as that there's no stasis point, that
we still use the resolution as the stasis point. What
Well, I
arbitrary
disagree
distinction
with
is
you
separate
because
from those?
you use resolution as negating the resolution as a stasis
Which
point.
means I have to have it.
I don't know if you know this, 1 and C's read literally fucking anything. Negating the resolution can mean literally anything. So this is not a stasis point for you to go off of.
So yeah, if you read your app on the net, it means the app can.
This
use
is
its
also
graph
not
that it's
responsive
going
because you have to
use
respond to philosophical bullshit with the card
Which you have to do anyway,
which
because
is
it's-
absolutely not a way for us to have.
But why does that not
debate
happen
that
under
can
your, why does that not
clash.
happen under your intern? You just said the neg reads anything. If you're the app, and then the neg just reads philosophical bullshit as you
Because the
classify,
carbon
why
tax
it
is
not?
the basis for the discussion that the
It's
neg
still the
has to
basis of the
disprove.
How is it still not the basis of
That is
discussion?
absolutely
It's still
correct.
linked to
Philosophical bullshit in the 1AC is the basis of discussion.
Okay, cool. Let's go on to your next card. You're actually, no. Let's go on to the Dahlberg evidence. So like, we say that limits excludes certain parts of speech and how those perspectives. Your card is only about the features of society. How does it link to our interp and our discussion of limits?
Our argument is that those exclusions are not a form of limits. It is a form of limited defense for that argument.
Yeah, so we're saying that when you make limits on how we interact with the topic, it removes perspectives from the topic. Again, how does different limits on society, which is what your card characterized, interact with what we're saying?
Okay, there's two arguments here.
Yeah.
The first one is that those like exclusions that you're saying that limits exclude, our argument is that those are external to the society. It is not debate that makes those things excluded, it is society that makes those things excluded. Our second argument
So
on
why
this
do we need to include those societal limitations then?
I'm
So if
sorry?
you're saying society caused those exclusions, why can we not try to remedy that?
Well, it is a reason that you can't solve your offense. It's nothing
That's a
to
reason
do
we
with
can't solve our problems. Okay.
Yeah, also the TVA proves.
Yeah, let's go with your TVA actually. It's degrowth. We tell you that like when you resent something else, it causes resentment. How is degrowth not a resenting of capitalism?
Why, how is it?
Actually, I just want to ask another thing. So wait, how is degrowth topical, I guess? Can you like explain
It's a
something?
carbon tax.
Oh, so it's a carbon tax. So why is our MBI offense not linked to it?
I mean, like, you can go for that. We disagree with that.
Yeah, so I'm asking why you disagree.
We disagree because we think that degrowth provides things like reconceptualization of humans' relationship with nature, relationship to capital, and how we should sort of consume and prioritize what kind of materials that society produces.
Okay, so I guess my next question is, you say philosophical stuff in the 1AC skews limits. How is degrowth not philosophical stuff? That still skews
Well, it
limits.
still has to be a carbon tax that is passed by like someone in the government, so.
It was sec. It's just gonna be case. Wait for thumbs up verbal confirmation. So.
One second, just
Look it up.
Derek. I'm good.
Give me one.
Is anyone not good? Cool. I'm gonna start. First, on presumption, they have no method to solve their impacts. Extend Carpenter 11 proves that if they get the fiat, all of us suddenly agree with their theory. It doesn't lead to broad global development. That no link is wrong. They are inherently local, i.e. because it's about a mindset shift for those of us in this round when they read their app and they drop the Scalian natural stuff. And non-unique philosophy was made by Plato and Aristotle, used by Christians to justify hierarchies, but none of that it fixes any of the nature offense that they inherit to the app. The impacts of it for their uniqueness evidence because new conservatism reigns supreme in the status quo. And for me, the one I see does not resolve this because the past number should have done it in framing issue. There wasn't an impact on the case. Even if there was, you're going to err neg because the third of the 2EC was unflowable. Roy already did a pretty good job on that. But on the D&G stuff, first they dropped the framing argument. We get links to their offers. It's key to defense and it's key to offense. It means that even if I lose the Wiseman link, then I still get a generic link to Toulouse Guitar Guattari and the theories that they endorse, which they have cited to get access to their subjectivity shift. Think about it. If they win, then they can make everyone think about the research that they have introduced in this round. That means people think about the authors they have cited, i.e. Deleuze and Guattari, which they specifically cited in the Halsey 05 card, which comes right after the fucking affirmation statement. Wiseman is game over for them because it critiques the use of inverse geometry, which they have cited on the T-flow, citing Deleuze and Guattari, Thousand Plateaus, and using the paradigm that IDF officials have used it makes citizens active combatants, i.e. views the self as part of society and only subject to the demands of the whole. This it kills. Yeah, that's bad. It goes drop. It's an independent reason that the AF's theorization and the subjectivity shift outside of this round leads to further militarization. And I'm not spending more time on this. The no link they've run a call proved mindset shift is bad because they didn't answer the policy teams do it. It's incorrect. Government fiat is an abuse of non-reward. Trump tariffs prove executive fiat. Also, circumvention arguments exist in the status quo. Every fucking policy debate has become a circumvention argument about whether or not Trump would comply with the plan. Proves there is no mindset shift fiat, and our interpretation is no mindset shift fiat. That's key debate for two reasons. First, it's variance. It justifies imagination out of offense. Ensures the app always wins, so they imagine away barriers to implementation, scale up, or solvency. Second, clash. Oblivious testing as those questions to no long because conservatives that regulated debating to philosophical competition, which is awful. That was the 2NC. All of this answers the iterative testing argument that they just said as a buzzword, but didn't actually explain the internal link to it. And even if they do get it, they can't fiat companies. Policy F don't do that, so it's not reciprocal. The Policy F is making arguments based on appearance that companies would change based on MPIs. They do not get to fiat that every company starts agreeing with grassroots movements. That was bullshit.
This question makes no sense. It's not so for us.
Yeah, I just did that. Yeah. Last thing is utopian fiat bad. It means actual fiat that they all agree on everything and stop doing bad things. Probably bad for debate. It kills fairness in education because we can't get links to everything. Every time the 2EC gets up and saying no, that agency agrees with that, and no, that everyone agrees with it, so it's world peace. That's bad. Nietzsche, we get the link to Resentiment. They do it. The app endorsement, they quote Deleuze 83, which says, quote, command of resentment only uses the latter to invest the trace. They can only act insolvency by ending the way that people were, ending the way resentment makes people act, and we have turned it and they have dropped it. Resentment is good. Solomon, it makes a whole lot of sense. Justice can only happen when people resent something. It's key to grassroots movements because they generate momentum by talking about the atrocities of climate change and the bad things that corporations are doing. Extend Black with 12, which proves that having an antagonistic relationship with climate change is key to getting 19 gigatons of reductions, which is a net benefit to the TVA because it uniquely acts as a climate education, and they have no warrants on why it's going to be on the case arguments, which make no fucking sense. And acting to change the world generates meaning that determines that counter resentment leads to social dominoes that cause their impacts. 12. Resentment assumes even power to reflects the nature of natural market. These lives the enemy life and the apocalyptic conflict between life of affirmation and resentment. We suspend the aristocratic predators undermined by the governance of biological degradation. We would argue the unequal distribution imposes rather than express rank under what nature ignores because it is a biological determinants and legitimacy needs to change the world resentment may be a legitimate sense of depression is not the voice of hierarchy but the passion of the justice denied. And I'm not going to read that next card, but we're not going for the indicted cycle, but they dropped it. That is non-falsifiable. It's analytic that I made right before I read the card. They can't prove it, and even if they've said that they would list empirics, they didn't in the 2EC, so they certainly don't get it in the 1AR. And on the act stuff, no link proves the abuse. No links to theory or offense. Yeah, no links to theory or offense on case means that we can only indict theorists, which the 2EC already talked about. The suffering stuff, they drop that life is inherently valuable. Experience, friends, family, potential for meaning and purpose, existence is a prerequisite evaluation of essence of the subject. So our scenario pre-proposes their offense. Even if they're right about suffering, there's still a large risk that we can enjoy things in life and actually gives life meaning. Can go 9. Nietzsche reject the whole humanity down so ready to make their own suffering. I think except we're rejected and Nietzsche's and to push liberalism and alternative responsibility legitimate to treat suffering and to reduce even if we cannot prove that, we can admit it, that we have decided suffering can be reduced. That is how we find meaning and even mentioned not help us remove suffering. We should view every moment as shifting away from terrible, even if we're going to reduce total suffering, cut that card in total suffering. The objective stuff, I didn't read the scientific cards, but I'm not sure why they answered them, but rejecting science is certainly worse. I'm not going to read the card there, but it is intuitive. There's no reason to reject the science. The only argument they make was in cross-sects, where they specifically said that science right now and lenses generically do not encompass all views. This is categorically wrong. Climate change... Yeah, no, this is categorically wrong. A bunch of people work on a bunch of shit. People think about science. Yeah, that's a shitty answer. Prereq is wrong. Roy did this on T. They either need to win a pre-fiat claim that they give them the ballot change how everyone thinks, i.e. it's impossible so activities drop, or post-fiat they're able to change governments and companies. The answer to some of the mindset shift stuff. The MBI stuff, they get no MBI offense. They've dropped their indebted to Schultz evidence in the 1AC, which isn't about an MBI or prices generically. It's just about how free market association works. We have read 3 specific cards in the 1AC. First is the Common Industrial 20 card, which specifically talks about how MBIs don't link to criticisms of the market. Market-based instruments are inherently different because they force action upon companies that they would not otherwise want, which changes market behavior. There's no links out of their offense from Schultz, so they don't get it. They don't get to cross blind on T. Yeah.
Cool. Yes, sir.
That's a good point.
Stop capture before we leave.
Okay, order is case T, no dog.
Jamie's ready.
Judges?
On presumption, voting out is an affirmation of life which generates value to the life. Drop out of the block. That always the only thing that matters is how we generate value to life, because extinction is inevitable. What they have does solve, none of their offense applies. People have been talking about carbon taxes, but it hasn't happened. That's not a reason why carbon taxes fail. We fiat our shift, which overcomes. Fiat is reciprocal. The utopian fiat voter is bad. Fiat is reciprocal. The fiat that Trump would say yes to the plan, not veto it, which proves that it's reciprocal, and no rollback proves that some level of mindset shift fiat exists. No ground loss. They can still argue that the way that the shift itself, the way that the shift occurs, results in bad things, or they can critique fiat, which means that they get plenty of ground. Now the D&G turn is really bad here because their evidence is specifically talking about the idea of using the idea of smooth spaces, but where the Halsey evidence is talking about the idea of flux and constant becoming, make them contextualize their terms specific to that. But two, our advocacy is embracing nature as chaos, not necessarily the flux. The flux is simply an analysis of the world and a truth claim about the world, which means that their analytic actually goes affirmative, because it demonstrates that the Losing-Guattarian are right about the way the world thinks, and rather we need to embrace the Losing-Guattarian thought and able to combat militarization by working on the same level as these militaries and not letting them circumvent our offense. But three is that our advocacy is specifically not smooth spaces. It's a negative epistemological statement, which they have no offense to. The resentment turn is bad. Resentment definitely generates violent lashouts. The justice example is actually an affirmative example. Think of the way that people resent criminals and then lash out, which causes criminals to continue to remain in the prison system and not ever be able to escape it or get a good life. And think of the way that it generates racism in the real world, i.e., we view a certain population as being criminal and taking our lash out upon them. This demonstrates that resentment is bad. You don't need to resent something in order to act against it. You can understand that that there are reasons why we should do something else, but that doesn't mean that we need to resent it. But secondarily, that our advocacy overcomes because it changes the way that we view the world. It dismantles the hierarchies, which are the root cause of oppression, which they've dropped. Not the next argument that they make is that this suffering, like life, is valuable in and of itself. This is our argument. Life is valuable in and of itself. And that's why you should be voting affirmative, in order to affirm the values of life. But secondarily, it demonstrates that nature should have value in and of itself, which proves our arguments about the value of that affirming the value of nature itself generates some sort of value. Now, the science argument, no, we're not saying reject science. We're saying reject the way status quo science thinks about the world, because the status quo science ignores the hidden dimensions, which allows for climate denialism to exist with. Drop the fact that conservatives are actually changing, which means that the affirmative is a prerequisite to any proper scientific understanding. Now, T. Top level, the app is a prerequisite for any benefit to the model. Apps that break down human non-human hierarchies that exist within clean energy policies. The market issue with the education that we produce merely feeds into the failures of a fascist system. Independently, there's an energy exhaustion DA. Debaters will burn out under their model as a result of flawed knowledge, setting them up for failure in the activity. This is the top level of the page. The debate is doomed to die and it's trying to die for the app. Now, the hidden dimensions DA extended. It comes prior to anything else. Their model requires us to role play as the rational policy making theory, which focus analysis of hidden dimensions like people's affects and biases. That's a wedge in evidence. Two implication of whether model green lights system and sex system in the space by allowing us to ignore the way in which people are biased against certain minority. This is an independent voting. You should drop it to you. Do it towards clash model that ignores hidden dimensions theory so much that fails to treat activists for the reality of the world, which is the only terminal. Yes, objectivity shit. This is the NDT and the rounds that you recorded, but even then presume that it's true. Anything else, green lights, in round violence. Now, the transcendental theology DA, it was dropped. It turns their framework and all their theory arguments. That model frames fairness as a transcendental idol that foresees any real world analysis and generates analysis. Two impacts. One, fairness impact. And then model school attached with the fairness prevents us from dealing with the rise of fashion. Think about how Trump breaks the rule and Schumer is responsible to continue playing by them, allowing the power to always challenging real world fascism is a prerequisite for survival for minorities. Two, resentment. They model causes debates to resent as part of taking to cheat, leading to violent lashouts to deal with frustrations that causes psychological violence, which is the independent voting issue, not always because real life is not a good game. Now, the TVA fails. One, caused by the hidden dimensions. The TVA fails to analyze it when machine fails. Two, epistemological failure. The TVA is a form of positive epistemology that makes knowledge claims regarding nature, which leads to all of our hierarchy offense. It proves they can't access perspective affect. Three, fiat, they doesn't generate actual affect through these policies, and they don't spill out around, which means they can't access any of the John Wayne part of the evidence. Four, resentment. The TVA views capitals as an object, which causes lash. Another Counter-interpretation is really good. Accelerate or affirmatives may either affirm or negate the resolution. It solves all their offense. They can use all their affirm on the negative or read all their neg grab. Don't buy any unpredictability offense. They have to grab for case anyway. Our model minimizes neg burning by letting them access their affirm as a valid shot on the neg, which means that no abuse for big schools, because we still set the resolution as a state points, which means that small schools can use their affirmative on the negative against big schools. Now that our model is predictable, the only stasis point that the negative has been able to identify in this debate is the resolution, which our model requires debaters to debate on. That means all their unpredictability offense is wrong, because every argument will be grounded in topical literature. Their only bright line was talk about carbon price. We are king of market-based instruments, which carbon tax is. If their argument is no philosophical critiques, drop the T for them advocating for the end of K debate and all K-lit. Our model solves ground that was on the overview. They could have read deeper about offense, which demonstrates ground that there's no. Now we're definitely a critique of market-based instruments. The Stutzel evidence and the Wenchen evidence both indict market-based approaches because of their rationality. But the Stutzel evidence is really good about critiquing the way that in which we assign economic value to something in order to cause change, which is the way market-based instruments work. They assign valuation to something. We say that it's bad because it assigns a value that is knowable, which the directed evidence critiques as causing the end of the intrinsic value of nature and allowing for the creation of human, non-human hierarchies, which demonstrates that we are definitely a critique of the topic and meet our counter-interpretation. Since their only bright line was this resolution, the counter-interpretation solves all that.
I have
242.
Right, sorry.
All right.
And then case.
Is everybody not ready?
No.
Here we go. Vote negative for a model debate that preserves predictable limits of it be revolutionary, but at its core it is a game where two sides can be and one must lose procedural fairness, because before every other argument in the round, because relies on fair evaluation in the first place. They drop, we should maximize this regarding the litany of individual regions debated maybe in the activity, regardless of revolutionary potential and surging a procedurally fair game is a prerequisite to benefit. That, plus the fact that we beat on norms like speech time, technical concessions, etc. proves this is an independent, intrinsic impact the ballot ought to prioritize. We are the only ones with the debate keyword. Voting negative can resolve procedural fairness, and voting at cannot resolve their dogma offense, nor any of their disads. They dropped their description of the world debate, traditional framework, etc. may be correct, but eliminating T debates and voting for Arizona State in round 2 of the NDT doesn't do anything. Fair debates are unique because of thousands of hours we were invested in vigorous research and a predictable spaces point, i.e. the resolution, which their model evaporates via allowing people to say whatever they want against the resolution in the 1AC, which explodes limits that will be explained below. No new arguments in the whole line of procedure evaluation of the 1AC. If we win our predictable limits, offense presume the app is false because we can't rigorously test 1AC claims and air negative on any questions we may have been light on. The line by line proper. They said app is prerequisite to benefits. Wrong. We answer their fiat stuff above, but it does not feed into fascism insofar as we've proven that degrowth is a way that clean energy policies can combat fascism, plus portable skills that combat dogma. Disprove this argument also. The next argument was exhaustion. They dropped the sandbagging argument. I'm not extending it, but I hid an internal link turn to burnout inside of this. Quote, if we win our predictable limits office, quote, pushes out debaters on the margin because they must respond in unfair environments of debate. That was the overview. That means all of their offense about both sexism but burnout cannot be net offense for them because fairness internal link turns just both, which means that they can't solve it, and it is external for you to vote on for the negative. The next argument they made was the dissad. Role play as a policymaker does not forego affect analysis. The TVA disproves that confrontational words like degrowth create affective analysis. That doesn't create sexism in the first place. Is not a voting issue. T presupposes that things that happen in the round, but the 1AR drop the internal link to this is inevitable, so it can't be net offense. The next argument is that Clash fails to train advocates. I will do this below on the interpretation debate, but on the interpretation debate, they said yes, subjectivity said because we're being recorded. That's probably not true because no one's gonna watch JMU debate Arizona State, but there's no shot that where they win subject formation. They've dropped it's non-falsifiable. Someone debates something doesn't mean you believe it. You need hundreds of rounds, friends, family, school, etc. all presuppose it, which means they have no mechanism to solve any of their offense, so you should default neg. We have a straight turn to their offense via predictable limits as their model creates endless dogmatic monologues and service level clash that makes us worse subjects. Only our model breaks this out via rigorous argument refinement. That was the overview. They said the teleology dissad was dropped. That is incorrect. This was done on the TVA insofar as an analysis of what the government can do. They said impact turn fairness wrong. They didn't answer fairness proper, and they 1AR just said that it prevents dealing with the rise of fascism. This is wrong. If you're correct, that fairness is the only way to combat dogma and create new types of affect through the topic. That means that it combats fascism. Insofar as the TVA also proves that our model can combat fascism. They said resentment causes psychological violence. What impact turned out on case? They said that TVA fails because it doesn't solve the epistemology offense. Go there now. The United States federal government should adopt a carbon tax to facilitate degrowth. It doesn't need to solve any deficits, prove neg ground, evaluate through the sufficiency framing. It provides inroads to some parts of the literature clash and fairness terminally outweigh the rest. The first thing it solves is affect. The evidence was clear. We need confrontation. The remnants evidence says use of the term degrowth is confrontational, uneasily absorbed but challenges materialism and consumerism, which is the internal link to the resentment dissad, changing how we view about capitalism. That means they can't get leveraged against C because the usage of the term degrowth in policy proposals makes it get noticed and combats the consumer's relation to nature. We have that is key to solve their internal links. They said something about mindset shift. The TVA also solves it. It promotes relationship with others based on community care, and it includes nature because it includes that degrowth allows a way out of disconnection as it connects us back to the earth. Their author agrees. The Yaksha evidence says Nietzsche would be supportive of environmental clause that reconstitutes our relationship to nature. There are two implications. One, it proves the degrowth extension is supported by their authors, which means they can access some form of lit under our model. Two, it says that Nietzsche would view climate change as an opportunity to overcome moral conventions and seek resistance against humanity is facing not only a physical crisis, but a crisis of value, and they can tie their philosophical inquiry to praxis, but only our model and not theirs do that through third and fourth level testing. That was above the counter-interpretation debate. It does not, no shot solves any of our offense. Not said a particular and trained for years of war of the debate. They dropped that, allowing the AF to negate the resolution, allowed not USFG, individual international action, etc. All of their examples of ground are concessionary, easily beat by currents, and want to see preempts, and not unique offense, because our model is insofar as a pick out of theirs. I'll do that below, but if we're correct, if we're correct that their model does not create clash or fairness that entrenches dogmatism through incentivizing shouting taglines and efforts needs of death or reasoning depth of reasoning necessary to change attitudes, which turns and disproves their education offense. They said F on the neg is predictable. That is incorrect. You still have to deal with philosophical jargon as a basis for discussion, and the 1AC carbon tax will never be responsible to this. The perm slays it because and the perm slays it. They said the only bright line is talking about the carbon tax. This is incorrect. The bright line is that the 1AC has to endorse a legal avenue of a clean energy policy that was the top of the extension of our counter-interpretation in the 2NC insofar as the CEP definition. The last thing they said was this is definitely a case of NBI. This is a non-starter for them. NBIs, and so the one NR said on case NBIs are the opposite of markets insofar as they provide. They make firms do the opposite of free association because they use price or quantity-based measures to force behavior that the firms wouldn't do in the first place. The resentment is good. The 1NC Solomon evidence is great. Justice and change can only happen when people restrict movements to people. Grassroots movements only happen when they generate momentum. It turns the racism argument. People become underpinned by neo-Darwinism. That's the array of evidence that was dropped, so we should hold an extremely low bar for it.
That's time. Order is going to be case then too. Sorry. Or do you actually mind if I go to the bathroom and go before I go to it? You said it was that way. Yeah, it's just right there. Thank you. To the right. Right. Oh. Almost walked into Owen's day. Okay. Case T. Slow it. Sorry, my first one. Their undercoverage in the case page is completely damning. It means that all of the offense flows through and changes try or die for the affirmative. The affirmative chaos and negative epistemology feed on as a mind shift, that means that changes to how we view nature, not as categories or resources, but that just is, and only can be used in that perspective that solves climate change by causing movements against governments decarbonize. That means that any offense that they're regarding on topic education is false, because it means that we're still getting that education proven by the fact they can see that we not one, solve climate change, and two, that we engage the state, meaning that we garner all those skills by concession of that offense. But even if you don't buy solvency whatsoever, extend the life for affirmation offense, that regardless of the app voting for concepts that remove categorization or apply for regardless of means that case defense is a non-starter. Now let's go to the T page and we'll apply that. The T debate was over the second they dropped the weighing mechanism for white niche at 19%, that at the end of the debate, humanity is inevitable, meaning that preservation only delays the inevitable, and the only thing that we can improve is the valuable life that we derive from the debate. This conceited weighing mechanism means that we just win. Any other weighing by the judge is judge intervention, because they give you no mechanism by which to weigh this round. If long as you're finding that we have an internal link to values of life, you instantly vote for our interpretation. And it means that the bad consciousness that the hidden dimension of transcendentality does that are completely damning. The bad consciousness says that from the bottom of 95 minutes, that when we value fairness as a idol, that it's the only thing we should strive for, we lose our value to life, because instead we orient ourselves to only work towards creating fairness in this round. And that creates totalitarian violence. And it also concedes the internal way that we apply that specifically to fairness at the bottom of 95 tags, saying that when we don't question the ethicality of the moral actors we create and only care about fairness, it leads to totalitarian violence. That's a straight turn on their fairness off, because it means even if a debate has all these mechanisms, external mechanisms, they're all just going to be used to create totalitarian violence outside of this round, which indicts the fact that fairness in and of itself is not an impact, but only internal link to all these other things. And even if it is an impact, it doesn't do anything, because all it leads to is us using these skills for bad ends. Secondarily, it removes our value to life, and it means that there's no point to living in the first place. It doesn't matter if the round's fair, if there was no reason for the round to exist in the first place. The concession of the fact that one fairness is an impact, and two, the fact that there's a way mechanism to overcome it means that you're not able to vote for the affirmative or the negation. Secondarily, they can see the hidden dimensions disadd. Oh, sorry, they can see the hidden dimensions. Oh, yes, that's right. Hidden dimensions, which says specifically that when you only look at things through a fairness perspective, you forsake the other dimensions of the climate crisis and of debate. They specifically concede the fact that humans are not rational actors. One, that means that unfairness is inevitable, because it means the judge does not decide the round fairly, but instead does not one thing. They bias. It means that fairness was not a non-starter to begin with. They say that it's non-unique to both sides, but if it's non-unique to both sides, it still means that unfairness is inevitable. It doesn't matter if it's not a diss, it's a case defense. So the idea that fairness will ever existed in the first place. That means you at least have some defense on their fairness model, but no defense on the bad consciousness. That means you, on an offense defense paradigm, you have to go for the bad consciousness as try or die. Next, on to other things. Oh, they dropped the IBI and the 2NR and doubled down on philosophical bullshit. They endorsed the idea of no critiques, framing them as bullshit, dropped the demeanor. Their rhetoric claims back to scholarship, native scholarship, etc. as being bullshit, even their subjectivity isn't true. You should drop the team to attempt to change their behavior. Anything else green light violence within the 1AR and drop by the 2NR comes before T debate shouldn't be allowed to be racist, even if you are fair. And you shouldn't be able to debate yourself out of being racist in the first place. If you're a violent fast day voter, you should not be able to debate yourself out of being violent. In green light people saying slurs, then being able to debate out of saying slurs. The fact that even if you don't agree with the IBI was completely dropped by the 2NR, and you can't find anywhere on your floor where they respond to it. That comes prior to you, because again, you should not be able to debate out of that. Secondarily, you can cross by the white niche 90 weighing mechanism, specifically that will remove valuable life from other people's perspective knowledge that is inherently back, so it removes their reason for living in the first place, which outweighs because everything will end except for our valuable life. And then complete that. Next, onto the defensive. The only literal state thing that they say you need for fairness is a stasis point. They drop from the glass 12 evidence from low 2AC that says specifically the resolution acts as a stasis point, because they drop the fact that even under our model, we have to make a unique disadd to the resolution, which means that they can read all of their offense, all their on the neg, which they said they already have to prep in the first place. Remember, go back to cross-ex, where they said specifically the reason why it is unfair for us to be asked because they don't have defense, but if they're able to read their affirmative on the neg, it means that they're able to answer all of this offense. Secondarily, the only reason that they say that it's unfair is because it's philosophical bullshit. But remember, they concede the fact that we say that you can still read it on philosophical bullshit on the neg when they're affirmative, which means that it's non-unique to both sides. Their only mechanism for saying it was unfair in the first place, and it mitigates any limits internally. Well, you all conceded this, that's coming towards the neg's interpretation. And they say that exhaustion, but remember, debate's inevitability means that the debate will inevitably end, meaning that exhaustion is not an impact physically delaying the inevitable, which means that which life outweighs. Next, they say the app failed to train advocacy, but remember, we say that advocacy is useless insofar as the advocacy is only needed to create of totalitarian violence. And on the TVA is horribly extended. They don't answer the fact that Stutzel 5 isn't making a claim about raison or about subjectivity. Stutzel 5 is directly making a claim about the value to life. Stutzel, go back to it after the round. Stutzel 5 said that when you attach value to things through the economy, it means that specifically you only look at it through the value of the economy. They say that degrowth makes a subjectivity shift that distances us. One, the cards do not say that. Secondarily, the fact that they create a carbon tax in addition to the degrowth means that the only value reason we get to degrowth is because of the carbon tax. But even then, remember, the only reason that they're reading the TVA is because it preserves fairness as a net benefit, which means it still links into the bad consciences act, because it idolizes fairness while sacrificing all these other things, saying that we need to be fair, because we need to be fair, we should go for the TVA. That still reinforces fairness as an idol. And they're going to answer being linked to the bad consciences act as linking to the TVA means that you extend it. You are going to be able to judge, intervene, and say that the bad consciences act doesn't link to the TVA because they do no work on the flow to answer it in the first place. And when you're devoting on track, look at the White-to-ID evidence. It says that value to life comes first. Everything after that means as long as you can find one internal link from the affirmative to value to life, you vote for the affirmative. Good round, y'all.
Good round. Do y'all want me to send the TVA cards in that card doc?
Sure. DNA cards are awesome.